Don't hang up that phone. We've found what you're looking for. Welcome to the Let's Talk Cabling Podcast with Chuck Bowser, RCDD. Well, seeing how we're pulling Category 6A, the most powerful twisted pair in the world, you got to ask yourself this one question. Did I pull 295 or 300 feet? Well, do you feel lucky? Do you, punk? What exactly does RCDD stand for? Registered Communications Distribution Designer. Just the expert you need to ensure your cable plant performs exactly as designed. The elite professional, knowledgeable, and experienced in leading-edge ICT design principles. Now, send the new guy to the truck for a bucket of dial tone and the cable stretchers, while you listen to an informative program on telecommunications.
Thursday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That can only mean one thing. After Hours Live with Chuck Bowser, RCD. I'm not wearing my RCD shirt today. Oh no, I'm breaking the brand. Or am I? Your favorite RCDD. You know who it is. Put in the chat box, who is your favorite RCDD? Come on. I put an extra D on that one, didn't I? RCDD. Yes. Put in the chat box, who is your favorite RCDD? You know it's me. You know it's me. So tonight is kind of a special. We're doing something a little bit different tonight. I'm doing another series, top 5 estimating ICT questions. Top 5 estimating ICT. That's our thing for tonight. But before we get too much further along, we do have to do the acronym challenge. The acronym challenge. So tonight's acronym has something to do with estimating RFI. Put in the chat box, RFI. What does that mean? Again, I told you it has something to do with estimating RFI. Put the answer in the chat box if you think you know what it is. Okay? Give you a few seconds to figure that out. So, hey, did you catch last week's show? Man, it was a blast. I had Mike Pinocchi from Network Protocol Solutions Protocol. I don't know, something like that. Mike's a brilliant guy. We actually put Ethernet through bananas. Yes. Shotzi's in the house. Shotzi says request for information. Michael Makupa's in the house. He also said request for information. And you both are correct. And since tonight's show has to do with estimating, that's right on the money. Let me turn off that thing right there. There we go. Next week's show is not done yet. I've got a couple recordings happening tomorrow night after work. I'm not sure what next week's show will be. So I do have some cool stuff in the pipeline. I got a show with Tempo. I got a show with Mike Makupa because he just got his RCDD, and a couple of the shows lined up. I got one with Jason from Jason's Lab lined up as well. So we have lots and lots of stuff to get into, right? So let's get into it. So tonight's show is about estimating information communication technologies. When we're talking about estimating, companies generally fall in one of two categories. There's the category of companies that they have a project manager and separately an estimator. The estimators estimate, the project managers project manage. And then there's companies where the project managers estimate and they project manage, right? I've worked for both. I've absolutely worked for both. And I can tell you right now, by far, the most efficient way to do it, I know this is going to sound crazy, the most efficient way to do it is to have a separate estimator that's all they can focus on. Because if an estimator misses just one thing on one line item, that could be as simple as a $20 miss or a $200,000 miss. Do you want somebody who's managing projects, also doing estimating, who might be able to miss something? Just saying. Let me know at what company you work for. Do they do separate project managers and separate estimators, or does the project manager do everything? Everything, right? So tonight, Kaylin's in the house. So the first question is, how do you determine the scope of cable project for an accurate estimation? So that's kind of a really broad, general question. So estimates come in a couple different ways, right? So let's talk about the formal method. So formally, you'll get an RFP, a request for proposal, an RFQ, request for quote. My headphones are connected. Thank you for telling me that. Let's turn them off. I did that last week too, didn't I, George? There it goes. So now the microphone should work on the phone for the people on TikTok. So going the formal method, the best way to do that is answer that RFP, read that RFP 2 times, 3 times. The first time you just kind of getting familiar with the document. The second time you start picking out some of the details, and then the third time you really start getting the grasp of it, right? And sometimes with the formal documents, you get the opportunity to go do a site survey or a construction meeting, right? You always want to read that RFP, the RFQ before the construction meeting, right? And what you might also want to do is, if you have somebody within the company who has worked for that customer or done a similar project for a customer, something like that, get together with them and start talking so you can really start to understand the specific needs and the objectives. Okay. And then you want to get the prints, right? The prints will help tell you a lot because you could have a project that could literally be hey, Jim's in the house. Hey Jim, good to see you, my friend. You could have a project that could be an entire floor, but only has 20 drops. You can have a project that has a floor, but has 2,000 drops. So you can't go by the prints, right? You got to look at everything. So it's all part of the whole process. Read the scope, perform the site survey, and this is not in the particular order. I mean, obviously you want to read the request for proposal first, but then I definitely want to look at those drawings, look at the blueprints. You will find details on the blueprints that aren't in the request for proposal. So you got to get both of those. And I would thoroughly go through both of those documents before I even try to put pen to paper on what exactly it is that size scope. Because now you got to make a decision. Once you've done that research and the size of the project and the customer and hopefully the schedule time frame that they want to do it in, now you have what I call the go no go decision. The go no go decision. Just because you get an estimate does not mean that you have to respond to it. There have been times as an estimator where I have told customers, look, we don't have the manpower to do this right now. And I've turned down estimates. You can turn down estimates. That is okay. It is allowed. Right. I know some people, some business owners will say that's crazy, but you can absolutely say no, sorry. And like I said, I have done that before. And then you want to look at, the building layout, right? How is the equipment going to be placed? Is it going to be telecom rooms, telecom enclosures? Did they have anything in there talking about future expansion? Because trust me, they're going to want to add stuff in there for future expansion. Now let's talk about what if it's not a formal bid? What if you just get a customer calls you up and says, hey, Chuck, I need you to come out and give me a price. We want to have 50 cables, 50 workstations installed. That's not a formal bid. I like those bids better, actually, because the formal bids, you're bidding against a bunch of other people, right? It's a very competitive scenario. I much rather estimate against 1 or 2 other companies than 15 or 20 other companies. That's why I've always tried to shy away from this formal bid work. Because like I said, that's why you heard me always say this. It's always best to get on a good working relationship with the customer. So they come to you before they put the bid out. Now, if it's a non-formal process, like I said, then you need to want to go out there and meet with the customer. Hopefully they have some kind of a document. Most of the time, that informal process, they don't. So you're literally going to sit down with the customer and they're going to tell you what they want. Oh, we want 50 drops. Hopefully, sometimes they don't even have prints. Sometimes they don't even have prints, right? And so what do you do? Yeah, a tip. Here's a Chuck Bowser tip. Find the fire evacuation floor plan somewhere on the wall. I guarantee there's more than one. Take that over to a copier, make some copies of it. Now you got floor plans. and then sit down, have the customer walk you through where all the drops are. And then you can, estimate your footages off of that, the hallways, find out what size of the hallway, because those fire evacuation plans, sometimes they look like they're scale, but they're not scale. So, so just gotta get an overall feel for how big that floor is. And then from there, once you get done, sit down with the customer and say, look, just a quick scope of work. You want me to install 50 drops. Each drop is going to be one voice, one data. The voice will be Cat 5e, the data will be Cat 6a. You want things terminate on, whatever a keystone patch panel with different colored jacks, and you want to use this connectivity manufacturer, that cable manufacturer, and then just get them to initial that. So that way you guys are both on the same page. That way you're both on the same page, and then you can take that back and then actually start working on that, right? Somebody here says scan it as a PDF with your phone, then use Bluebeam for the rest. Oh, I'll have to check out Bluebeam. I've never heard of that one. That's a good point though. Taking a picture with your phone and converting it to a PDF, because when I was an estimator, we didn't have cell phones. Well, only the boss had cell phones. That's a great point. Great point. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate that. And I'm going to definitely check out that software that you just talked about. So the informal process, now that you got the initialized, now you got using the same page, right? Next question is, what are some key factors to consider when estimating the quantity and type of cables needed? Well, the first part is understanding the actual numbers. So I already kind of touched base on whether you're counting off the prints or if you're doing that informal walkthrough. With create a spreadsheet and say, okay, how many simplex drops do I have? How many duplex drops do I have? It's real easy to create a spreadsheet. And if you don't know how to do spreadsheets, you want to learn it if you're going to become an estimator, because even if they start doing projects in an estimating software, which we'll talk later on, a lot of them look a lot like spreadsheets, right? So get the capture and then get your footages, right? You want to calculate those lengths for those cables. The most accurate way to do it is to measure every single run. They have digital wheels, they have the estimating rulers and stuff like that. As long as your prints are scale, you can use that to estimate. So the best way to do it, if you have time, is to estimate every single run and then tally those up. Okay. But as estimators, you don't always have the most time in the world, do you? So sometimes what you might actually have to do is do what's called averaging. And I don't really like averaging when it comes to estimating projects. Somebody asked me if I could talk about battery backups. Tonight's show is about estimating ICT projects, but I'll put that down as a future show, though. So averaging, what you do is you measure the distance from the horizontal cross connect to the furthest run. Measure another one from the horizontal cross connect to the shortest run. Add in your drop, and for both in the horizontal cross connect, your drop at the work area outlet side, and then some slack, and then divide those two out by 2 to find out what your average is. The problem with doing by averages is you got to pay attention to how those drops are spread across the floor, right? That's assuming that the drops are evenly spread. There will be times where you might have a cluster. The majority of the drops are going to be further away from the horizontal cross connect. In that scenario, averaging is not going to help you. You'll be short of cable. You might have projects where the majority of the drops are closer towards the closet. In that case, you're going to end up with too much cable. You probably did not win that project because you had too much cable in it. Too much. And if you got too much cable, that means you also have too much labor in it. But you can also do an alternate that's kind of a go between the measuring every drop and doing averaging is you can average by clusters. So what you can do is just kind of pick an area that seems feasible and then measure the shortest one in that cluster, the longest one in that cluster, and then find another cluster, measure the shortest and the longest, and then average those all together by clusters, and you come up with a more accurate number. Measuring by average. Cable guys in the house. Hey, how you doing, cable guy? Measuring it by the averaging like that, you better make sure that you put in your terms and conditions that you're basing your price on an average run length of whatever it is you determine during your averaging. Then it's just a matter of counting up the types of cables. Is it Cat 5e, Cat 6? Is it fiber? Is there a backbone to it? Right. Another good thing too is you really need to consider how the cable trays are going to run, right? What hallways are they going to do? So what you might want to do, and this, a lot of estimators catch flack for this, by techs in the field. So techs in the field will say, well, the estimator never came out and even looked at the job. They never even popped the ceiling tile. Sometimes estimators don't have the opportunity to do that. Sometimes the building's not even there. But if you don't have the access to the building or for whatever reason, but you do have the floor plans, and let's say that they didn't give you the electrical drawings and the HVAC drawings and all that other stuff, well, then what you can do is redline the drawings, put a red line down the hallways that you think that you're going to be running the trunk lines down, and then put that in your terms and conditions that this bid is based on having free and clear interstitial space in the ceiling for this hallway, and this hallway is identified with Appendix A, and then Appendix A, make a copy of that picture, that drawing, and put it in in your submittal. That way, you've actually got tied in. So that way, if you get on the job site and you find that there's too much electrical, there's too much HVAC in that, or for another reason you have to go down a separate hallway, you have a good solid foundation for a change order. Now, you don't want to go, that's a whole nother, that's a show in itself. People talking about the beard knowledge is in the house. That's another thing too. People say, well, price low, bank on the change orders. No. If you want to build a customer for life, that's not the way you want to do it. You can do many one and dones, but you'll never make a good, decent profit most of the time. But if you estimate with the customer in mind, where you don't have to put in those bank on hopefully getting change orders, that customer's going to love you, and they're going to come back and they're going to give you opportunities to bid other work, and maybe opportunities to bid work where you're not even estimating against other people, right? So there we go. Let me see if a comment came in from Jim. Lengthwise would make data centers super easy to estimate, right? Or am I wrong there? So data centers for me have always been harder to estimate because even though the runs are shorter, they're more complex, right? You have a really dense population of drops, right? So you can have one rack with 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 patch panels with 5E, 6, 6A, and all this other stuff, right? So somebody says, hey, Chuck, you taught a class that we had in 2017. Hey, good to see you again, Brian. Good to see you again. So yeah, data centers to me are a little bit more complex. And there's a lot more data centers. You have to be careful for working hours, working conditions, causing dust, stuff that you typically don't run into when you're estimating like a commercial office building, right? So that's the kind of thing. Next question is, what do you account for variables such as length or termination points in your estimates? So I already talked about cable length. I already talked about routing. So termination points, when you start doing those, that's just a simple matter of counting up the work area outlets and the different types of work area outlets, because then you could just multiply. If you've got 10 duplex outlets, right, that's 20 cables. If you got 200, that's what, 200 times 2, that's 400 jacks. So now the real question is, what kind of jack is it? Is it just a regular jack where your techs have terminated day in and day out, or is the customer speccing out some new connectivity manufacturer whom you guys don't use on a regular basis, right? And so what's going to happen with that is, when you go to do those, you got to think about, okay, how much extra time do I need to put in the jack? How much time do I need to put in the jack for each person to terminate, right? Because again, it might be, a lot of times I would use 3 minutes to 5 minutes, depending on the jack and the crew, because you got to look at the crew too, because you can't, you're going to have a crew in mind when you go to do the estimate, but that doesn't mean that crew is going to be available when it comes time to actually do that estimate. So it's always better to kind of go in the middle of the road. And then the way that you overcome that hump is, if you win the project, when you sit down and you talk to the project manager, you tell them, look, I based this on using crew A, the cream of the crop crew, but they're out of town doing this. So now we're putting crew B, but I estimated X amount of period of time to run each cable and each check. So that way the PM knows it and they can manage that and they can make sure that they meet those, right? So you can't estimate how long it takes to terminate a patch panel, how long it takes to terminate a jack on how you can do it. Okay, how you can do it. You can't do. If you do that, you will run into problems. The Beard of Knowledge says plus multiple crew members can't be at one patch panel. Oh, that's right. Oh, that's absolutely right. That's why I said, if you have a project that's 100 hours, if you put 2 people on it, that's 50 hours each, a little over a week, right? If you put 4 people on it, that's 25 hours. There is a point, as the Beard of Knowledge points out, if you put 100 people on a project that's 100 hours, it's not going to get done in 1 hour. It's not going to get done in 1 hour. So there is a balance there, and you got to understand it. So some companies will generally run their cable install crews in crews of 4, crews of 6, crews of 8, depending on the project size. Small service work, maybe crews of 2, and you can certainly build your bid on that. Next question is, can you explain the process of estimating labor costs for ICT cable installation projects? So there's 2 trains of thoughts here, right? 2 trains of thought. One is, if you had the opportunity to measure every single run, well, now you know the total footage. There is a factor that you can put in there per foot that will accommodate how much labor you need for each run. So, that factor can be anything. You have to figure out ahead of time. Then you can do labor by the drop. Okay, well, a crew of 4 can pull 20 drops in a day. Well, that's actually not very good, but you can figure it up that way. I've always preferred to do it by the footage. That way you can easily do, additions and stuff as opposed to doing it by the drops, because if they're putting in a new drop, it may not be similar to the drops that you priced up. So if you do it by the footage, it's a little easier to do that, right? Once you got your hours measured in, you got to figure in, okay, setup time, tear down time. Is the crew meeting on the job site every day, or are they meeting at the office and then driving to the job site every day? Those are all parts of the process that you got to think about, right? And once you get that figured out, then, okay, how many hours is it going to take to put in the support system? Are you putting in the support system? You can be putting in J-hooks, ladder rack, cable tray. How much time does that take? Can you have a crew start putting in the support system, let them start a week ahead before the crew that's going to start doing the cabling? So you can literally run 2 crews, one putting in the J-hooks, one putting in the cable tray, and the other crew pulling cable behind them. You can do that as well too. And that helps be efficient for you. Because when it comes to bidding, it always comes down to price. Customers will always tell you, no, we want the best contractor. We want the best contractor. They always say that. But it always boils down to price every single time. Every single time it boils down to price. So you got to keep it, and you got to figure out ways to do that, right? Now, you also need to account for overhead costs, right? Well, how much is the project manager going to be dedicated to that project? Or is the project manager going to be spending some of his hours this week on this project, some of his hours another week on another project? There's a general train of thought here with project management or project managers. Do you roll them into overhead, or do you assign their hours to the actual project? So that way, the project's what we call billable. My preference as a manager is always to have my project managers billable. So a good project manager can run anywhere from 2 to 6 projects, 2 to 8 projects all at the same time, because projects are never at the same spot. One they might be, waiting for to start up. Another one they might be putting in the infrastructure. Another one they might be testing. Another one they might be pulling cabling. They're all at different spots. So in that scenario is you can say, okay, 10% of the hours in this project are going to be project management hours. That way, that project manager is billable to the project, because that's what they're really there for. Overhead for me has always been area management, safety, maybe warehouse. That's your true overhead, and administration, right? What tools or softwares can you recommend for streamlining the estimation process in the ICT industry? Okay, so there's a couple different tools out there, right? So let's talk about AutoCAD. AutoCAD is really good for the drawings and stuff, but when it comes to estimating it, the best thing I've always thought was a spreadsheet. Spreadsheets are easily manageable. You can customize them for a particular project easily. Now there are estimating programs out there like ConS and some other estimating project software, but most of those are really designed and geared for the electrical industry. Now, granted, yes, we are kind of electrical, but it's not going to be the same as electrical, right? So you got to be careful with those, right? Got to be careful with those. Except for ConS. ConS is actually geared towards the low voltage side, but they actually started off doing electrical. And with the ConS, because I actually looked at buying ConS software once when I worked for a company, and now you're talking subscription-based software. That's extra money going on the overheads. With the spreadsheet, all you can do is dedicate one person, come up with a boilerplate spreadsheet that works people through the process. And I've actually got a boilerplate estimating spreadsheet that I created, for a class that I did for estimating once. And I still got that spreadsheet actually. The good thing about that is it's very highly customizable. But the bad thing about doing spreadsheets, especially if you're dealing with, now if it's my spreadsheet and I'm the one who's dealing with it, that's easy. That's easy, right? But how dare you say we're Sparkies? But if you're estimating, if you have a crew of 3 or 4 or 5 estimators and you're using one spreadsheet, not everybody has the same skill sets when it comes to spreadsheets. So it's very easy for someone to overwrite something. Now you can protect cells, right? But I've had people, even with cells that are protected, I've had people put in a space instead of a number, and that affects the formula. And the next thing you know, it starts having all different kinds of problems, right? So, but to me, spreadsheets have always been the best, right? Especially if you're in a company that has estimators across large areas, you want to have that spreadsheet fine-tuned for each of those areas. Because see, the workforce in Raleigh, North Carolina, the average crew rate is not going to be the same as the average crew rate in New York City. The average crew rate in New York City is not going to be the same as in Birmingham, Alabama, right? So you can actually set up spreadsheets to select those workforces. Now, granted-wise, productivity-wise, they should all be the same, but the average work, how much you charge per hour for a crew, especially when you go to union versus non-union areas. And this is not a show to say which is better. I like both. I like both union and non-union. Okay, they both have great benefits. And when I say benefits, I mean for working for them. They also have drawbacks. So you'll never get me to say one's better than the other. But you will find differences in price and labor forces if you're pricing it. And you might actually work where you might actually you might be based out of one area, right? You might be based out of one area, but then they might actually price a job 3 states away. Okay. Well, is that an area that you can go to? Is there a union workforce there? Do you have a portability agreement? Because if you're a non-union company, you can't go into a union area and just start working. You're going to cause problems. Right? And now you got to roll in T&E, travel and expenses, right? They got to drive out there, hotel fees, food, all that other stuff. And all that stuff gets rolled into the project, right? All that stuff gets rolled into the project. Michael's was looking at Reisman's the other day as one of the best ways to estimate larger scale jobs. I don't know that program. I'm going to have to actually look it up. If you have Mike and I are friends. Mike, send me the link to that so I can look at that. Maybe I can get somebody from them on the podcast to talk about estimating ICT projects. Wouldn't that be kind of cool? Yeah. So yeah, you want to store them prints digitally. And then while I'm talking here, if you want to have a uniform way of file architecture, right? And there's lots of different ways you can do this because there's going to be project managers, area managers, all wanting to, maybe people from HR wanting to get to your proposal, your spreadsheets, and all your ancillary documentation. You want to have a file architecture that's going to be uniform across all the projects. Now, I've seen some companies they'll do estimates 2023, and then under estimates 2023 they'll have a folder for bidding, a folder for won, a folder for lost, And then when you go into that folder, then it'll have different names for the different projects. And then you can store stuff inside of that. You can have the estimates in the subfolder, the drawings in another subfolder, because nothing is more frustrating as an estimator when you go to open up a file and you find that it's got 75 files in it, and they're all got some kind of weird thing to it, and it takes you forever to figure out what's going on with it, right? So, oh hey, did you see my estimating shirt? The estimator creed? Yes, it says, "We the willing have been doing so much with so little, or designing so much for so little for so long, that we are not qualified to design anything with nothing." You can buy this shirt on my off of my webpage. Go to my webpage, letstalkcabling.com, go to shirts. You'll find the Amazon link there. The Estimator Creed. Actually, I got a draw. I got a drawing for it. Here, I meant to say this earlier. Here's what the shirt looks like. Boom. The Estimator's Creed, right? And it's pretty cool, right? It says, "We, the willing, led by the unknowing, have been doing so much with so little for so long that we are now qualified to design anything from nothing, and are typically the first to get blamed." Yeah. Fabian's in the house. Nezzy's in the house. Yes. Yes. So help support the show. Buy one of the shirts. Like I said, I'm wearing one today. Estimator Creed. Yes. All right. We're at our 30-minute mark. I appreciate everybody coming by today. If you have any questions for the future, for next week's After Hours Live, send them to me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm on TikTok, as long as the government doesn't shut down TikTok. Instagram, send them to me. I'm looking for a subject matter for next week's show. All right, everybody. Till next time.